Hey guys, wanted to share a really interesting Dragon Alexstrasza game, which I think really shows one, how flexible dragons are in the current meta, and how to effectively play to multiple different outs. Right now, there's kind of three-ish main dragon comps that you can think about running. The first would be a evoker spell-based dragon comp. The next would be a Caliban dragon comp, and then the last one is the like AOE spell buff dragon comp. Really, just classic line here with Alexstrasza. Something that I've really started liking to do more is going 3-on-3 gives you this very clean level up where you can buy 2 3 drops on turn 4 and then level hero power on turn 5. And you can just see that this is a lot of tempo where you have this um, like a Tavern Tier 4 and 2 Tavern Tier 3s starting on turn 6. And from here, we're able to greed Bobblehead and we get the triple, so there's just a lot of value here. We get the Poet here, which just gives us a ton of value with just what we already have. And really, we're just trying to find a way to use the Greenskeeper, and we find that with the Hoarder. Really, the biggest thing I would say here is there is the option to take a 6. I think with Dragons in general, you're going to want to use Tavern Tier 4 to stabilize, and just there's a lot of really good 4-drops you can find. And you can just see, like, we have an insane turn 6 board right here. Especially with the double Poet, we're just going to be getting a lot of permanent buffs, especially on those Divine Shields. And on top of that, we're using the Greenskeeper to generate us Dragons every turn. I would say in the early game, you're generally going to want to be using this 4-drop with Greenskeeper to generate your Dragons. Going into the late game, depending on what comp you end up going into, you might end up using the Naga Dragon to get the spell buff. Really cool here, you can see that off of the Greenskeeper combo, we're able to triple our Poet here. And the biggest 6-drops that we're looking for, we're ideally looking for either Evoker. We end up settling for Specialists, but we get 2 of the Hoarders right now, and we can potentially use that to go into a couple builds. And you can kind of see here, we're kind of right now stuck between 3 builds. We have the Spell Generation, potentially if we move over what battle cry we're triggering every turn. And that can either go into the Evoker or the Hoarder build. The other option is if we find a brand, we can potentially go brand Kali from this. And then if we end up going the Evoker build, we'd want to keep the Poet. If we didn't go Evoker build, we could potentially be selling the Poet because we don't actually have in-combat scaling right now. And for that very reason, the order that I would sell comps from here is I would sell off the Caligos first. One, it's the weakest of these comps. And when I'm talking about selling them off, I mean like to make space for on the board or whatever. So Kali is probably the weakest. Ignition Specialist is the other one that's not really essential to any of them, so that can go first. But from there, we end up just trying to use Battle Cries here with the brand. And we're trying to fish here to see if we have Evoker. We would have gone Evoker if we found it, and we miss again. So I end up taking the Greenskeeper here and probably selling out of the Kali just because we don't really have that scaling. Potentially we could have done Greenskeeper and Kali for in-combat scaling, but I think without brand that's just not strong enough. But because we have the Hoarder going, I consider 2 Hoarders the equivalent of Hoarder and Drakari. Obviously, like a Drakari in here makes it a lot better, but that is kind of the equivalent to committing to the spell buff end of turn kind of comp. And we still have the flexibility to go into that Evoker comp if we find it. However, right now it's more essential that we roll on 5 and try to triple up both the Hoarder, the Naga, as well as if we could find a Drakari, that would just make our scaling a lot better. But in general, I'm kind of leaning towards this end of turn dragons with that potential flexibility over into the Evoker comp. But I hopefully, like, this last couple of turns, I really think kind of demonstrate the thought process that you should be doing in all of your games for when you could actually scale. Let's say we didn't have these Hoarders, I would probably have had to keep a, like, Greenskeeper Kali Poet comp because we wouldn't have had the Hoarders to rely on for the spell buff. But you can kind of see how we were able to navigate through playing 2 or 3 different potential outs, and those kind of let us determine. We ended up playing what actually is the weakest out here, which was the Hoarder comp because we didn't have that. Really good combo I found here as well. This 2-drop Drake, when you have the Golden Greenskeeper, you can potentially use that to get an extra spell generation battle cry every turn. But yeah, again, hopefully like you can kind of see how we were able to determine from what drops we found which of the comps that we were going to play. There was a lot of potential outs that we um, could have been going, but the Hoarder and the Conjurer Repair just are such a good strong, and you see here that we are able to triple both of those this turn. And then this lets us flip into kind of this like Death Rattle synergy on top of this. So using Nadina and Hawk, we're able to use those as an extra way to proc spells. With this, the next out would probably be the non-golden Greenskeeper. Just there's not as much value from that anymore. Um, and Nadina is also going to help us generate more spells because now that Wind Fury Divine Shield, the Greenskeeper is going to have Divine Shield, hopefully, whenever we hit. And this is also just a lot of in-combat scaling. You can see here how much stronger we were this combat because we had those Divine Shields. From here, the last thing that we want to start doing is finding more Nadinas. We do find that here. And the reason for that is the way that we end up losing from here is just not having enough resets. We have as much scaling as we're going to reasonably get. Right now, it's probably too late to ever find like a Drakari or something like that. However, I do think it is worth running Golden Nadina here solely for the reason, if you count that we're running 4 dragons, so this guarantees that our Greenskeeper is going to get Divine Shield. And that way we don't need to worry about just getting really bad RNG. With Double Hawk, we're also able to use that to just guarantee that we're going to be getting the 10 rings every turn, and that just makes it so we're getting the max scaling that we can possibly have. We can potentially sell out of one of the Hawks and instead run like a Leroy or something else, maybe an extra dragon, but you might even run an extra Nadina and use that as a reset from here, and that's kind of what I'm thinking of. Is the only outs from here would be something like a Nadina or a Leroy. From here, I see that there's this Drake. I don't know if this was the right play, but I use this just to get us a little bit of extra health. Because I find that Nadina, I can also use that. So what I'm doing here is I use the dragon just to get me some extra health in this fight. Then I sell it, and I think I probably just use like Mug plus Nadina just to get a little bit of extra scaling here. But with this, you can just see how strong we are. And we're going into turn 14 with a almost 100% win rate chance. Plus, having those beetles just takes out Divine Shields, and we have a really strong comp here. And you can just see what those Nadina resets. You can just see how much spell generation we have. Like, we probably would have gotten about 16-ish rings. But yeah, that's a really good game. Hopefully, you see how flexible we were able to stay. Please like, subscribe, comment if you enjoyed the video. Y'all have a good one. Bye.